Greetings and welcome to our daily walk through the scriptures for March the 13th. Our conversations today take us into Numbers chapter 21, the first 20 verses of Numbers chapter 22, Luke chapter 1, verses 26 through 56, Psalm 57, 1 through 11, and Proverbs chapter 11, verses 9 through 11. Now, there's a couple of different things that we're going to look at today, and we're going to start with the Old Testament in Numbers 21 and 22. Now, the significance of these two chapters is that it's really setting the stage. Okay, the whole point of Israel leaving Egypt was to eventually get to the Promised Land and eventually get to the land flowing with milk and honey that God promised. And they had to wait 40 years for it. But during that 40 years, God was still moving and God was still active and God was still doing things to prepare them for that move into the Promised Land. And in Numbers chapter 21 and Numbers 22, we see instances where that's happening. Okay, first of all, we see the enemies that the Israelites vanquished. Now, we have to remember that there's some significance in this. We look at this and we go, okay, the Israelites were the better army. They defeated, Arad. They defeated the king Og and Sihon and those things. And we think that's not a big deal. It actually is a big deal. You have to remember that the Hebrews have never fought before. Remember where they came out of. They came out of captivity. These were people who were enslaved. They might have had a mental toughness for sure and a physical toughness, but for them to actually fight, they've never done it. There was no formal training. There was no formal army. These other peoples that had to fend off. Remember, this is nomadic during this time. There's a lot of nomadic tribes and things. So these kings that the Israelites fought were supposed to be better. Okay, they were supposed to be bigger and badder than the Hebrews, and yet they defeated them through God. And these are important bits of information because they're going to set the stage, and we're going to actually see their names come up here in a few days when we start getting into the book of Joshua. So pay attention to what's happening here and recognize that God is always on the move, even when we don't necessarily see what's going on. Never doubt that he's doing something behind the scenes. So that's a very important thing that we want to take away from that. And then also, as we look at the birth of Jesus, Luke tells us a story that is very unique among the Gospels. He goes into great detail and shows us beautiful aspects of the birth story, particularly how Mary deals with this news. And we get the beautiful song, the Magnificat, from Mary. Take some time to read the Magnificat, to look at it and look at the depth of what Mary does. And look at how you read yesterday and how that kind of contrasts with how Zechariah responded to Mary, or responded to the news. Zechariah had a little bit more disbelief than Mary did. Zechariah was like, oh, this ain't possible. Mary's like, you know what? God is God, and if I'm going to be his servant, so be it. I'm happy to be his servant. So there's some really beautiful things. So you might back up a little bit and read some of yesterday's in Zechariah's accounting, and then look at Mary's accounting and her response and the Magnificat, because that is such a beautiful thing. But Mary had some help. Remember, Mary was probably pretty scared and pretty worried about what was going to happen at this time. And so she went to someone that she trusted, someone who was older than her and wiser than her, a mentor, if you will, and that was Elizabeth. And Elizabeth gave her wonderful, sage, beautiful advice. And so our takeaway from the New Testament today is this: who are you? Who are you investing in? Who's investing in you? See, we should always have this Paul-Timothy type relationship happening. We should always be looking for someone that we can invest in and encourage and support. But we also need to be making sure that we have people in our lives who are building into us, who are stretching us, who are giving us the sage advice that we need. We need an Elizabeth in our lives. So there you go. There's our two conversations. One, remember that God is always at work. God is always doing something, even when we don't see it. He's preparing and paving the way for whatever it is that's going to give him glory. And number two, we should take the advice of Mary, the young lady, and find someone that can build and invest in us in godly ways that make God look good. Okay, that's it for today. Have a blessed. We'll talk next time.